After telling my wife about being called to work urgently to attend on important meetings, I got out to have some fun with my friends and left her all alone at home. I do feel bad for doing this though, but for some reason I'm getting tired of her these days. She used to be so different when we first started dating, always on edge, thinking if she looked nice enough for me. Every time I saw her, she used to have a refreshing smell with her cute outfits and makeup. But now, after 2 years of our marriage, she doesn't care what she wears in front of me. She never wears any makeup. Hell, she doesn't even shave her legs anymore. She's still beautiful though and takes my breath away just like the first time I saw her whenever she gets ready for an occasion. But other than that, the excitement I used to have for her, touching her is fading away. It's not like I don't love her anymore. I know in my heart that I do. I can't even bear of ever thinking of my life without her. That's why to get a little bit of excitement away from her, I sometimes lie to her a little bit, just like tonight. Anyway, so I met up with my friends and we decided to hit up a bar. It felt good to take things off once in a while as we drank together and talked about our life problems. As I entered the bar, I felt the vibration of my phone ringing in my pocket, so I took it out to see who was calling me. But the moment I saw the name flashing on my phone, the emotion of irritation replaced the little excitement I had. I told her never to call me. Why on the face of the earth was she doing it now? Hey Simon. Just hearing her loving voice was enough to creep me out. What do you want, Kelly? I asked in frustration, with clear signs that I didn't want anything to do with her. Well, I just wanted to tell you that I'm at your home, but I can't seem to find Anna for some reason. My heart dropped as I heard this. There was no way she would have known my address. Did she stalk me? What are you doing? Anger started to fuel my voice along with fright. I thought it was obvious. I'm here for you, baby, she said with that same freaky voice of hers that sent shivers down my spine. How did you get in? Where's Anna? I asked. My voice was starting to quiver. I don't know, the lock was easy to open, so I let myself in. And about your wife, I can't wait to meet her and tell her about us. A weird eldritch excitement filled her voice as she said that. You need to leave right now. I disconnected the call immediately and called Anna to check where she was. I rang her phone 3 times, but she wasn't picking up, which made me even more agitated. But as I rang the 4th time, she picked up and told me she was out buying some snacks with her phone on silent mode. I told her to wait for me at the grocery store so that we could walk home together before disconnecting the call. As I was driving home, I started to remember how Anna kept telling me for the past few weeks that she felt like someone was stalking her. I should have taken her seriously. I should have done something about Kelly. What should I do? I know I told her to wait at the grocery store, but it's just 2 blocks away. My panic level only kept rising as I started to think of the possibility that she could hurt my wife. I would lose my mind if anything were to happen to her because of a mistake I made in the past. Why did I meet up with Kelly and get seduced into sleeping with her? I've been feeling guilty ever since, even though it was just a one-time thing. I called Anna again, but when she didn't pick up even on the 7th call, I called Kelly, but she wasn't picking up. There was nothing I could do before I reached home, and it was taking too long. I was holding my tears out of fear when my phone started to ring. As I saw it, it was Anna. I immediately picked up. Honey! My heart clenched at her sound because her voice was trembling, as if she was crying. Is everything okay? Are you okay? Where are you? I'll be right there. My panic increased tenfold, not knowing what Kelly did to her. The stalker, I think I killed her. She paused before saying that in a slow, shaking voice of hers. What are you saying? I asked as I turned left. The house was just a few blocks away. The girl who was stalking me, she broke into our house and attacked me. I didn't want to kill her. I just pushed her, but her head bumped into the table and she stabbed herself with the knife she was holding. She continued sniffling as she told me that. Don't panic. I'm here. You didn't kill her, okay? Trust me. I was almost there. Once I reached the home, I immediately parked the car out front and rushed inside. The moment I walked in, I found the house a mess. Anna was sniffling on the floor with her knees up to her chest. and her face hidden between them, while Kelly was on the floor. A knife was stabbed on the side of her stomach, and her hands were holding it. My brain went foggy for a few minutes before I could respond. I rushed to my wailing wife and told her it was not her fault. "Why didn't you tell me?" As those words escaped her mouth, as she looked at me with red, tears-filled eyes, my heart sank even deeper. Did she find out? What? I could feel my voice shaking as I managed to get a word out. I saw her phone was filled with our pictures, mostly yours. You were the one she was stalking. I'm sorry I didn't realize it sooner. It must have been hard on you. My guilt kept multiplying with every word of her apology. None of this was her fault, but the way she was saying it seemed like she was taking all the blame for herself. Listen to me, Anna. You didn't kill her, okay? You were not here when she died, I said with determination as I looked directly into her eyes. What are you talking about? As she asked me with an innocent face as I took out her phone from the bag and handed it to her. Just do as I say. Dial 911 and tell them I killed Kelly. Leave the part about your involvement. Understood? She looked at me confused as I told her that, but she didn't resist much and followed my command. When the cops reached, I confessed about killing Kelly and said she was stalking me for a while, but today she took it too far. It was true though, looking at how she had our everyday pictures in her phone, which were taken as evidence. As they were taking me with them, Anna came closer to hug me good as she was crying so much. I didn't know her name was Kelly. A cold current went down my body as she whispered in my ears. I looked up in her eyes, which felt colder than ice, even with all those tears dropping through them. She knew. She knew all along. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. Hey Maria, guess where I am? I called my sister the moment I landed in my hometown Barcelona. Let me guess, one of those bars where you pick girls to harass. Her saying that made me feel a bit embarrassed, but she wasn't wrong since I'd gone to a different path there. It had been more than 6 years since I last visited after going to New York for college. Well, I wouldn't make any excuses for that, looking at how I was a bit occupied with my bad influence of friends. My sister Mariana had given me calls almost every other day to check on me and ask when I was coming, and now due to a minor issue, I had no other choice but to visit my hometown, and this time, I was here to stay. No, I just landed in Barcelona, silly. As I said that, I could hear her squeal in excitement, which made me laugh a little bit. After telling her that I would be home in an hour, I disconnected the call. Breathing the air of the place where you grew up sends a different calmness in one's mind. As childhood memories mingled with my thought, her face suddenly popped up after such a long time. Catalina. It had been almost 5 years since her name crossed me. It was as if my past was completely entangled with her reminiscence. She was one of the reasons I hastened to the college in New York, as I couldn't bear to watch her affection toward her good-for-nothing fiancé. That was also why I avoided all possible contact with her, and why I avoided my visits for all those years. Well, that and the partying with the girls. I wonder if she married him yet. Well, whatever the case, who am I to worry about that? Even after that, my subconscious mind couldn't stop thinking about her, as if a part of me wanted to avoid her. Another part of me was longing to see her. The first time I saw her was in kindergarten. She was standing outside the school with her knees covered in bruises, and the red of her hair was different than I'd ever seen. The first time I saw that shade of hair was hers, which was more carmine than normal red, and her big dopey emerald green eyes met mine. Even though I had no idea what I was feeling, I could say that I was captivated by her. My legs moved on their own, making their way to her as she looked a bit fearful while sniffling. The word came out of my mouth without my will. Are you okay? She blinked twice before her sniffles got louder, leaving me perplexed about what to do. But before I could say anything else, she ran away crying. That evening, a friend of Mom was to arrive for a visit, and she had instructed us to be on our best behavior. But the moment I saw a familiar redhead walking in with the lady Mom introduced as her newly made friend, I got rather intrigued by her presence. The two of us were introduced to each other, and we became friends swifter than I anticipated. My one-sided feeling for her started growing along with our age, but I was in denial of it because until the time we got to high school, I started to notice other guys taking interest in her. I swear whenever I saw any wanker eyeing her, I wanted to gouge those buttons out of their heads and knock their teeth out. And that was when I realized I hated picturing her with someone other than me. That day, I decided to confess my feelings to her. That was the day we graduated from high school. I was on my high horse that entire day thinking she was going to be mine, until she came over with her mom to my house. I was fantasizing about her in broad daylight as I watched her eyes dropping on her mom's conversation when I noticed her blushing to her ears, and that was not intended for me. My eyes automatically paid attention to the conversation going on in that room, and as the words crossed them, my heart started to sink by the second. They were talking about her engagement, but that was too soon. She had just graduated from high school. But on further listening to them, I got to know it was to strengthen the business between the two families. My gaze went to her blushing cheeks and her slightly curled lips into a smile, announcing the rejection of my feelings. The following week, that guy who was to marry Catalina arrived, and I couldn't bear to see the way she reacted to his every word. Those reactions were supposed to be mine, and I was this close to cutting him into pieces, but was holding myself back. I had already applied to a few college applications and was already accepted in some, but before all of this transpired, I was planning on staying here thinking she was going to accept me, which didn't seem to be the case now. So I decided to choose the college in New York and scurried there within the next 15 days. To avoid any thoughts of her entering my mind, I did everything. Party, drinks, drugs, girls, even forced redheaded ones into my bed. And eventually, I blocked all her memories. I had been a real mess for the past 6 years, and not just any mess, but getting into trouble, illegal messes. The reason I rushed back home was that I got entangled in the murder of 3 boys. I did stab one of them, but the other 2 were not my doing. Luckily, the police still had no clue about our involvement, so to avoid any further confrontation, I thought it'd be best to come back home. I didn't even realize when I reached home amid all this reminiscing. Mariana was right outside the house with a big grin on her face, and the moment I got out the cab, she ran into my arms. "Welcome, brother." It had been such a long time since I'd seen my dear sister, that instead of bickering like always, I embraced her as well. My family had 2 British short-haired cats at the home who must have been of 7 years by now, and since I still had Catalina's number, I sent her a picture of them with a text that said, "I didn't realize it's been so long." Her reply was rather quick and full of excitement, asking me if I had returned and how much she missed playing with those cats. "You can play with them if you want to," I replied, hoping she would understand what I meant. "How do you suppose that to happen?" Her reply came pretty fast. "You come over?" I texted her back. After taking her sweet time, she texted, I don't know, it's been quite a long time since I last visited your house. What would Auntie think?" "Don't worry, I'm sure she misses you too. And if you're too uncomfortable, why not come when they are not home?" I said that because I knew everyone had work to do, so our house was mostly empty during the day. She gave a positive response and said she would be visiting the next day. The 2 of us talked for the entire night over texting, and I found out she didn't get married yet. She was having second thoughts about the guy since he was abusive and had done many unexplainable things to her over the years, adding to her previous traumas. At the moment, she was trying her best to avoid meeting with him. I know her suffering shouldn't make me happy, but I was feeling content that he treated her badly, which meant I had another shot with her. Just this time, I had to make her mine by any means necessary. Living in the bad places of New York had woken a rather diabolical side of me, and I guess that was the reason that a heinous plan was cooking immediately in my mind. The next day, she arrived on time, and the moment my eyes landed on her, I started to feel intoxicated by her presence. She had grown into an even more beautiful woman than she was before, and since there was no one at home, I could put my little diabolical plan into action. I asked if she wanted to have a look around my room while I made drinks for the two of us, and as she climbed upstairs to my room, I put the same drug I had used on many other women in the past years. When I got there, her entire focus was on a book, and the more I looked at her, the more breathtaking she felt to me. I handed her the glass with juice while I gulped my beer. The moment she took the last sip, I could tell that the effects had started to take over her, and she fell asleep. I put her gently on my bed. "I'm sorry, love, but I have to do this, so you can't slip away this time," I whispered in her ears as I leaned over her and nibbled her ear. Damn, she smelled so good. Her aroma was taking over my remaining senses. I slowly placed my hands on her thigh and started proceeding further. As I was in the middle of doing that, she suddenly opened her eyes, which only got bigger in shock, and I could feel a rush of panic taking over her mind as she grabbed my throat and flipped me over. Ah, yes, how did I forget she excelled in martial arts and self-defense, even when she was just in middle school? But how did the effect wear off?
My mom is really good friends with one of the wealthiest people in our town. They have a daughter, my age. I don't have a crush on her or anything, but my mom has pushed me to ask her out before. Never did. Here's the weird thing about the situation, though. My mom and this friend, along with her daughter, all kind of act like their friend. Like a bunch of high school girls getting together to gossip. My mom works in a beauty salon, so I guess I understand why she likes to act that way, but it's still pretty weird nonetheless. There was one specific occasion when this woman and her daughter were going to visit New York City. They decided to invite my mom for some reason. I don't understand why. I guess they really were better friends than I had previously believed. But my mom decided to say yes. So it was just me and my dad at the house, but here was the thing. They didn't have a dad at home. Their house was going to be completely unsupervised for the entire weekend. I was in my early 20s at the time, so I guess they thought it would be a good idea to ask if I would watch the house for them, which I agreed to do. I didn't get paid or anything, but they said I was allowed to eat as much food as I wanted, and considering that they were rich, I thought, why not? This also gave me an opportunity to write some short stories. I always loved writing, and I published some of my stuff online sometimes. I think it was that Friday night when I was watching their house. They told me that they had 2 cats, but they were really scared of strangers, and I was probably not going to see either one of them the entire night. It didn't bother me. I just had to make sure that they had food and water, which they did. I was chilling at the kitchen table, pounding the keys on my laptop on my latest story, when, all of a sudden, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I looked up from my computer to notice the ugliest cat I've ever seen in my life. Just imagine a hairless cat, but also morbidly obese and cross-eyed. It was honestly the strangest thing I've ever seen. Any one of those traits individually would have made a cat kind of cute, but seeing all of them thrown together in one pitiful excuse for a pet almost made me want to bust a gut laughing. I felt kind of bad for laughing so hard at this girl's cat, but it's not like I hurt it or anything. That had been a good break from writing, but then I got back into it. I remember being in the middle of writing a really interesting scene. This ghost was abducting the protagonist of the story. It's kind of a psychological thriller with a little bit of paranormal thrown in there. It's very spiritual and weird. I'm kind of a weird person. But that scene still sticks with me because as I'm writing it, I noticed something outside. There was a man in a hooded sweatshirt walking around. I sat at the kitchen table, stunned. I didn't know what to do. I felt the adrenaline burst through my veins. Fight or flight. Well, I figured that my car was outside, so running wasn't going to do me much good, and after a minute of rationalizing the situation, I had no proof that this person was out to do anything bad. For all I knew, this could have been a jogger. I got up close to one of the windows to watch this man. He seemed to be sneaking around. He wasn't coming toward the house I was in, so I figured that I was at least safe for the moment. But then I noticed him looking into the window of the house across the street. I can only assume that he was checking houses to see if people were home or not. Must have been an actual burglar. Just show up in the wealthy neighborhood and see who wasn't home. I don't know why he would do it at night, though. Looks as suspicious as he did. We live in a gun state, after all. And after a few minutes went by, and I could tell that there were people at home at the house he was checking out. By the time he realized, I noticed him do a 180. He was walking in my direction now. I was about to be face to face with this man. I saw him walking across the street and I immediately started to panic. I called the police as fast as I could and told them the situation, but they said it would be about 20 minutes before anyone could be here. I ran up to the attic to hide. I locked the door behind me. In retrospect, this was my biggest mistake. I should have turned on a bunch of lights and made it obvious that someone was here. I'm good at thinking, just not in the moment. The house must have looked uninhabited by the time I had gotten up to the attic. This made the house the perfect place to burglarize and steal everything. I was in the attic for about 10 minutes when I heard a window breaking downstairs. He was in the house. My heartbeat was inside of my forehead. He walked around the house for a few minutes. Thud. Thud. I heard the humongous boots marching across the wooden floors. He explored the house for a good while. I was really beginning to wonder where the police were. Typical. I heard him get close to the attic entrance, and that was the moment that pushed me over the edge. I started screaming at the top of my lungs that I had a gun. I told him that I was going to shoot his head off if he didn't leave the house immediately. And to my absolute shock, he ran away. I watched him run down the street as I looked on through the window. It appeared that this guy was even more scared for his life than I was. The police eventually got there, and I told them the entire story from beginning to end. They said that a couple of people had been reporting this guy in nearby neighborhoods, so this wasn't the first night he's been out doing this. The police explained that this guy hadn't been violent on any of the occasions they'd been called. They said it was about the 7th time this month that they have responded to a similar incident in a wealthy neighborhood. I guess he's going around looking for an easy way to make money. He hasn't been face to face with any of the homeowners yet, so maybe he isn't a violent criminal, just a criminal in general. I found the entire experience really interesting yet mortifying. Living through it was probably the most scared I've ever been. My mom, her friend, and their daughter didn't even come back early from their trip after it happened. I thought that was a lame move, but what do I know? For revenge, I ate every single pizza roll they had in the freezer, and if you're wondering, there were 3 bags of 90 pizza rolls. I ate over 270 pizza rolls that weekend, and I have no regrets. I sorely needed them after that borderline traumatic experience with the burglar. In late June of 2014, a 28-year-old German man by the name of Lars Mittank took a vacation to the Bulgarian seaside resort of Golden Sands. Popular with tourists from all over Europe, Golden Sands is a major resort town on the northern Bulgarian Black Sea coast, adjacent to a national park of the same name in the municipality of Varna. Located just over 15 kilometers north of downtown Varna, it is virtually connected to the city by a continuous swath of resorts and villa communities. On the 6th of July, Lars and his group of friends found themselves in a disagreement with another group of young German men in a local bar. Lars and his companions were fans of the German football team Werder Bremen, while the opposing group were Bayern Munich supporters. There was a rather high-profile rivalry between the two football clubs, and the playful disagreement soon descended into a violent confrontation when one member of each group began pushing and shoving each other. The fight between the two of them quickly became a full-on bar brawl between the two groups. Chairs and bottles were thrown, pool cues were used as weapons, and in the fray, Mittank suffered a ruptured eardrum from a particularly vicious strike. Mittank was forced to visit a local doctor to have his head examined. It was discovered that the injury was a particularly nasty one that came with a rather high risk of internal infection. So the doctor prescribed a course of the antibiotic cefuroxime and advised Lars not to fly for the next couple of weeks, as it would risk seriously exacerbating the injury and cause a grievous amount of pain. It would also require another examination at the Bulgarian hospital in the coming weeks in order to ensure the wound was properly on the mend. So, Lars stayed in Bulgaria while his friends drove to the airport and flew back to Germany. He took a taxi back to the Hotel Color Varna, making reservations that would cover his recuperation period, then tried to spend the next few days relaxing and healing from his particularly nasty wound. But just a day after his friends left him behind in Bulgaria, Lars began to act very oddly indeed. His bizarre and erratic behavior was captured by the hotel's closed-circuit television security cameras. He ran around the hotel, looking over his shoulder, accusing staff and guests alike of plotting against him. A few of those encounters almost turned violent, and on more than one occasion, the hotel staff threatened to call the police. Finally, once Lars's behavior had become unbearable, the hotel staff asked him to gather his belongings and leave, as such violent outbursts were strictly against hotel policy and could no longer be tolerated. But before he checked out of the hotel, Lars made a call to his mother back in Germany. She later stated that he seemed extremely upset and told her in hushed tones that 4 German men, possibly the same his friend group fought with in the bar that day, were coming to kill him. He told her that he had made a significant withdrawal of cash to live off of and that she should cancel his credit cards. When she asked why, Lars told her that the men could use them to track his movements. Where he got such an idea is a mystery, but he seemed very, very insistent that this was the case. We know that on the 8th of July, Lars Mittang traveled to Varna Airport in an attempt to travel back home to Germany against the doctor's wishes. He attempted to purchase a ticket on a flight back home, but after looking around the airport and apparently seeing something, became so flustered and frightened that he abandoned the attempt altogether. Lars then sought out a medical services area of the airport, although it is clear that he did not ask for any medical attention and would not tell those inside why he wished to remain there. They later confirmed that he seemed jumpy and paranoid, as if though he was hiding from someone that was hunting him. About 45 minutes after originally taking shelter in the medical services area, the airport's CCTV cameras captured some kind of construction worker making their way over to the medical area. This seems to have triggered Lars into rushing out of the airport, having abandoned his backpack and luggage altogether. More CCTV footage shows Lars running across a 2-lane highway, dodging speeding vehicles as he does so before reaching a large fence. Lars scaled the fence with frightening strength and speed, then sprints full pelt across a meadow before disappearing into a field of sunflowers with a set of deep woods beyond them. Police investigated the incident thoroughly but found no evidence that Lars was being followed by anyone. They even contacted the group Lars's friends had fought with, but they all had alibis that confirmed that they were nowhere near the airport on the day of Lars' disappearance. Many theories about what happened are all over the internet. Some theories believe that he was being used as a drug mule. Some believe that he suffered a psychotic episode. Only 2 things are completely certain regarding this behavior and unexplainable incident. The first is that Lars did not suffer from any form of mental illness. The second is that Lars was never seen again, anywhere, or by anyone.